Boeing says it's operating in what it considers the most complex environment it's seen since World War II, from record demand for commercial jets and defense platforms to strains in the supply chain and geopolitical headwinds.
3 minutes ago, Boeing made an announcement that sent shockwaves through Washington, Wall Street, and, most notably, Mar-a-Lago. For the first time in modern history, the American aerospace giant is permanently ceasing commercial manufacturing in the United States. How did Donald Trump respond? A digital bomb that lit up the internet and demonstrated one thing: when Boeing fails, Trump burns. Within seconds, the former president was online, causing a collapse that included fury, blame, and wounded pride. It wasn't simply about business. This was personal. For a guy who built his reputation on planes, employment, and America first, witnessing Boeing halt production was like seeing his brand tear apart at 35,000 feet. Trump did not simply react, he erupted. He accused Boeing's board of treason, advocated for military involvement, and said the corporation had become a pawn in a globalist war against American greatness. His buddies cheered, his detractors laughed, and Boeing, the radio is quiet. Behind the hubbub, however, lies a far deeper story, one that links business bankruptcy to political identity, as well as a legacy that now stands on the tarmac. Buckle up, because the guy who once wielded Boeing as a symbol of power is now seeing it disintegrate. And he isn't going down gently. Boeing's announcement of a complete suspension of commercial aircraft production in the United States was not a postponement. It was freezing. All production lines, including the 737 MAX, 787 Dreamliner, and 777X, have come to a grinding halt. Workers were sent home without any warning. What about the ripple effect? Immediate. According to Boeing sources, there was a perfect storm of component shortages caused by global supply chain instability, increasing union pressure following failed contract talks, and declining foreign demand, notably from Asia and the Middle East. Executives also highlighted regulatory uncertainty in recent FAA supervision, a veiled reference to the increased scrutiny of safety failings. However, the wider picture, the closure will affect tens of thousands of workers in Washington, South Carolina, Missouri, and elsewhere. Suppliers, transporters, airport logistics companies, everyone in the aviation pipeline is ready for financial damage. Within hours, Wall Street responded. Boeing shares fell by more than 15%, wiping off billions of dollars in market value. And it isn't just about airplanes, it is about power. Boeing has long been seen as a symbol of American engineering prowess, a cornerstone of both military and commercial aviation. Now, that emblem is anchored, as is the idea of industrial stability. Government officials hurried to release comments, but nothing stuck. Biden's staff encouraged calm and promised supportive pathways for a relaunch. On the other side of the aisle, however, one man was everything but calm. Because for Donald Trump, this was more than simply a business choice. It was a betrayal. Donald Trump did not simply like Boeing. He needed it. From the beginning of his administration, Boeing was his go-to symbol of American grandeur. He toured its facilities, posed with its planes, and hailed its employees as the heartbeat of the American dream. He also renegotiated the Air Force One contract, famously tweeting that he saved the government over $1 billion in the process. Boeing served as the background for his campaign speeches. On Twitter, that was his prize. To Trump, Boeing was more than simply a firm. It was a living symbol of his America First philosophy. That's why Trump acted quickly after learning of the production halt. He became enraged. Within minutes, his Truth Social feed flashed. Disaster! Boeing has halted production after being run down by Biden's union thugs and radical regulators. Unthinkable. In a subsequent article, he accused Boeing's current board of being infiltrated by globalists and said that military takeover might be the only option left. Yes, the statements were outrageous, but they were also deliberate. Trump understands that Boeing's demise threatens a fundamental component of his political identity. If Boeing fails, it will expose a lie, that his leadership has saved American industry. Now the optics are reversed. Boeing rose under his leadership, but is collapsing without him, or so he wants his supporters to believe. Insiders say Trump recently approached Boeing officials about a potential campaign tie-in with the newly rebuilt Air Force One. Is that the plan? Grounded indefinitely. Meanwhile, Republican supporters hastened to endorse Trump's request for congressional inquiries into Boeing's political motives. What's with the irony? Many of them voted to reduce subsidies that previously kept Boeing alive. Trump's preoccupation with Boeing created a fiction, but now, with the corporation frozen and his reputation attached to its wings, That myth is dissolving in mid-flight. As Trump's outburst dominated headlines, Boeing's board was obliged to respond, not with outrage, but with cold business precision. Late in the afternoon, a brief but clear statement was issued. The decision to halt U.S. commercial production is solely based on current market conditions, safety priorities, and long-term strategic alignment. Any suggestion of political motivation is completely false. But the harm had already been done. Inside sources verified that Boeing officials were taken aback by the ferocity of Trump's comments. One board member, speaking anonymously, stated he speaks as if he still governs the country and owns the corporation. He does not. Another reportedly referred to his post as economic vandalism. Boeing, which was still attempting to rebuild its image following years of safety concerns and grounding scandals, did not need a political firebomb delivered on its doorstep. Trump's threats for a military takeover were not merely dangerous. They bordered on dictatorial excess. Legal commentators instantly questioned if such proposals would violate corporate interference rules. The Department of Defense discreetly distanced themselves. The FAA issued a clarification, stating that manufacturing halts were due to safety improvements and component shortages, not political sabotage. Even conservative news sources were hesitant to completely endorse Trump's statements. Meanwhile, investors anticipated turmoil. Following the tweet storm, Boeing shares fell further the next morning. Financial experts reduced its forecast, citing unpredictable political risk as a crucial component, an unusual action explicitly related to a former president's actions. This was hardly the type of attention Boeing sought. It wasn't the type of ally they needed. In private meetings, Boeing officials voiced growing fear that Trump's obsession with the firm may cause more harm than good. The guy who had previously lauded them as champions of American ingenuity now sounded more like a disgruntled partner out for vengeance. And with one legendary project remaining incomplete, retribution took on a face. The new Air Force One, a special 747, 8 designed to Trump's specifications, is tucked away in a Boeing hangar in San Antonio. Its metamorphosis halted in mid-flight. It was intended to be Trump's crown gem. He personally negotiated the $3.9 billion agreement with Boeing in 2018, reducing prices and publicly proclaiming that the new presidential jet will be top of the line, American-made, and a symbol of strength. He even updated the color scheme, replacing the usual blue and white with a more vibrant red, white, and navy pattern. In his view, it was not just Air Force One, but Trump Force One. The aircraft was slated to be delivered in 2024. However, due to the Boeing standstill, final assembly has been postponed indefinitely. Insiders suggest the delay might go until 2026 or later, depending on labor agreements and supply chain recovery. And it implies one thing: if Trump wins a second term, his fantasy of flying in his own Air Force One may be put on hold. According to leaked papers, Trump's team had already planned advertising depicting the jet, drone footage, patriotic music. Trump descended the stairs waving like a conquering general. Now, those clips languish in editing rooms, unfinished like the plane itself. The symbolism could hardly be more terrible. For Trump, Air Force One demonstrated his ability to rule Washington, bend Boeing to his way, and leave a legacy in the skies. Instead, it has become a symbol of what could have been: a half-completed jet, a halted campaign centerpiece, and a metaphor that is flying nowhere. According to sources close to Trump's staff, he is furious. Not only is the plane incomplete, but he understands what it represents: a broken promise, a missed spectacle, and control slipping through his fingers. In the end, Donald Trump was most spooked by a grounded aircraft facility in Washington state, rather than a courtroom, a scandal, or an election. Boeing's shutdown impacted more than anticipated, not because of what it cost the economy, but because of what it cost Trump's reputation. For years, Boeing had served as a visual representation of his political brand: power, sovereignty, and dominance in steel and sky. He immersed himself in its symbolism, boasted about its agreements, and saw himself reflected in its wings. Now those wings have been cut. The planes aren't flying. The contracts aren't being signed, and the plane he once claimed would exceed every previous presidential aircraft remains unfinished on a hangar floor, much like the fantasy of his unstoppable legacy. And while Boeing attempts to steady itself, Trump is disintegrating in plain sight. His temper outburst was not about policy. It was about pride. His collapse reflected desperation rather than plan. This was not simply another business choice. This is when Trump understood he could no longer bend giants to his will. And just maybe, the guy who once flew above the political battle is now experiencing what it's like to crash, with no one remaining in the cockpit.